With the recent nerfs and buffs in Season 1 for MWZ, did the game just become too difficult to play? In this video, we're going to talk all about this. I'm Nomad, and here on the channel, we cover all things MWZ. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel as we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, but let's just jump straight into it. Now, I want to quickly say, please stay till the end of the video because I may have some brutal, honest opinions, and I want you guys to see exactly where I'm coming from. First off, do I think they were reasonable to nerf and buff the damage output as well as damage received in each zone, or the nerfs to the decoy grenades and other things across the board? Not really. This is a PvE game after all. Although I will say I do think the game moved a lot more fluid prior to this update. I won't go as far as saying these changes have completely broken the game for squads or solos and made it completely unbearable and doable, but I do think it did make some of the zombies in specific zones spongier than they need to be, and the time it takes to finish engagements has been extended, and that can add a little bit of a boring factor to it. I do think that. But I'm going to just straight up say it. The game is not too difficult, whether you're solo or in a squad, whatever it may be. Now, if we take a look at the launch of MWZ in the tier 3 zone specifically, at the beginning, I was a little nervous and skeptical to go into the tier 3 zone, but once I got used to it, got used to the zone, the environment, and what I needed to do, it's a breeze now. But at the end of the day, the name of the game for the tier 3 zone is run around with your fists out, shoot the hellhounds that are coming behind you and other zombies if you need to, collect contracts, mainly go for the cargo delivery contracts. You can grind out those schematics while using turrets along the way to your advantage. But primarily, we were just running around avoiding engagements, not actually fighting. We would fight HVTs when we had to, but we wouldn't take out groups of zombies consistently like I do think the game mode should be played. Now, straight away, this is not how the game should be played. Is it wrong that we are doing this? No, not at all, by any means. I too play this way, but with the introduction of the Tier 4 zone, a completely different map, not only is the zone tighter, there's a lot of elevation changes, less turrets, more HVTs, and plenty more zombies that are faster and do more damage with the buffs and nerfs they did. But with that being said, I do think all of this was intentional from the developers to an extent, because there is a specific way zombies needs to be played, in my opinion. Now, obviously, I'm not saying you have to play one specific way. You know, you could play any way you want, but I do think there's certain parts of the game that is part of the mechanics of the game and the way it works, and that's generally how the game mode should be played. The biggest difference is the fact that in the tier 4 zone, we actually have to engage whether it's high value targets or ads. The rate at which we need to engage the enemy is way different than what we are used to in the tier 3 zone. Tier 3 zone, you just ran around, you can avoid most engagements. In the tier 4 zone, we don't have the luxury of that. We have to fight off all the hordes. We have to fight off most of the zombies that we encounter. Sure, are there rifts around the area? There's other elevation changes from zip lines, vertical and horizontal, areas to jump off of, and ways to avoid zombies. But at the end of the day, all we have to do is actually engage more fights. And that is the biggest difference that I see in the tier 4 zone. And that is why I think a lot of people are thinking the game mode is way more difficult. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I do think these nerfs and buffs were not necessary. I think the game moved completely fine, especially with introducing a completely new zone. And we don't even have pack 4 yet. I do think the nerfs and buffs were not necessary, from enemy damage, player damage, the deduction of both. I will say, as a solo player primarily, doing the tier 4 zone is doable solo. Whether you're doing it for the first time and you're killing the new boss, or you're doing it and you're completing all 3 contracts, it is doable solo. You just need to be kitted and have a different mindset. We no longer can use decoys. We no longer can just run around with our fists out, try to avoid conflicts. A lot of the tier 4 zone is actually engaging in the zombies, and to be honest with you guys, it makes the zone way more fun. I think the tier 4 zone by far is way more fun than the tier 3 zone. Heck, I don't even go into the tier 3 zone often. If I need to, I'll just jump into the tier 3 zone just to loot up and prep for the tier 4 zone. And that's what I recommend you guys doing. The biggest difference is the amount of prep work we have to do. Now, we're not going to get into cooldowns of the acquisitions and schematics and all those things and losing gear and games crashing. That is a different discussion for a different video. But at the end of the day, all it is prep work. I do have a video coming out soon with a gun setup that absolutely destroys everything in whatever zone you are, whether it's legendary or epic rarity, pack 3, you'll be able to take on any zone. That video is going to come out soon, but all I'm saying in this video, it's not to bash anybody, because the tier 4 zone is hard. Don't get me wrong. It is a hard zone, and I do not make it out every single time. I'm not saying that. I'm not the best player. I do die a lot. But at the end of the day, this is purely intentional because there is a lot to gain from the zone, whether it's experience because the amount of ads are on screen, whether it's different contract completions, the new schematics, as well as old gear that you can get, let alone the Easter egg with the doghouse and the door. the nest at the bottom of the fortress. There's so many different aspects of the new zone. Plus, there's something out in the ocean that we haven't even figured out. So all I'm saying for this video is I want to encourage you guys to continue playing. You know, I want you guys to not be discouraged of the zone, especially if you're a solo player. And queuing up with randoms, whether you have a key, if you are the only one who has access to the new zone in your game or somebody else, queuing up is very good, and a lot of people want to do it. They want to help you out. That's what I've done so many times, and I've gotten 6-man squads easy, and it just makes the tier 4 zone more fluid. But at the end of the day, just think of the new zone as a completely different aspect and a different way to play the game. We have to play the game completely different in this zone, and that is, I think that's awesome because it's a completely different way to play. The tier 3 zone was getting boring with everyone stealing contracts. You're not killing anything. You're kind of just running around trying to get schematics. It's literally what the tier 3 zone was meant for, in my opinion, at least for me. Just try to finally hope your RNG is good enough to get those last schematics that you need. But with the introduction of the tier 4 zone, think of it like the tier 3 zone, but without the luxury of just being able to run around. You have to fight engagements. You have to learn how to do these engagements. You have to learn how to engage specific HVTs, what they're weak to, how to kill them, because there are a lot of mechanics that I learned just from playing the tier 4 zone that I have never used in the game that are core parts of the game that I learned, and I was blown away because I'm like, oh my gosh, I could take this into other zones and make those zones completely easy. If I could do this here and be able to survive like an escort contract and keep the health of the machine over 85% in the tier 4 zone, what could I do in the tier 3 zone, you know? So at the end of the day, I just want to kind of boost your guys' spirits about it, because I know that I've heard a lot of, you know, negative things about the update in the tier 4 zone, and don't get me wrong, guys, I do think the nerfs were not necessary. I think it should be reverted 100%. I am going to say that I do think it should be reverted to the way it was. I think the game worked completely fine, especially like I said with the introduction of a new zone. It worked perfect. Everything is just more spongier, and it does cause the game to be a little bit more boring and long-winded, but at the end of the day, it is not too difficult. It is doable whether you're taking it on solo or with a squad. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Again, guys, I'm not bashing anybody. This is my opinion. Everyone can have their opinion, and I 100% respect it. I just want you guys to get your spirits a little bit boosted and try to take on the zone and take it on from a different perspective. And it's going to be difficult. It will. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. You may lose your operators. You may lose your gear, but that's the point. Kit up. Gear up. Once you finally finish and conquer the zone, you're going to feel so good, and it's just awesome. It's a fun zone to run. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, I'm not bashing anybody. Drop a like on it if you enjoyed it. Not only does it help me and the channel grow, but it helps this video go out to more people, and honestly, it helps the algorithm. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel as we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you in the community, and as always, guys, stay happy, stay hyped, and have a beautiful day.